Welcome to Healing Step to Wellness. I'm Dr. J,
I'm May.
your trusted guide to Hoper's health, one step
And one bite at a
at a
time.
time. Today, we're honored and nervous to welcome Dr. Neal Barnard, a physician researcher, author, and founder of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. Dr. Barnard has been a leading voice in preventive medicine and nutrition science for decades.
Yes. And Dr. Barnard published probably more than 20 books also around it. We lost the track. And Dr. Barnard has dedicated his 4 decades, at least 4 decades of a time in public health and promoting the whole food plant-based nutrition around the world. His book, his work actually has been translated into multiple languages. That's really amazing. Dr. J and I actually grew up in Taiwan. When we travel in Taiwan, we found like-minded physician and organization. And guess what? They had some books from Dr. Barnard and published it in Mandarin. So I'm so excited, super excited to meet with my hero here.
Yeah, Dr. Barnard, thank you so much for joining us today. To begin, could you tell us a little bit about your background and what first inspired you to pursue medicine?
Well, first of all, thank you both for including me in today's program, and thank you for all that you have done to spread the word of healthy diets at your conference and in so many other ways. You have empowered people with life-saving information, so thank you. It's a delight to be able to be with you today. What got me involved, I went to medical school here in Washington, D.C., and started doing nutrition research, but I have to say, before all of that, I grew up in Fargo, North Dakota, and in Fargo, we ate like we were in the cattle business, really. Nutrition was not something we thought that much about. And in fact, my father did grow up in the cattle business, and so did his father and pretty much everybody I knew. But my dad didn't like it. He didn't enjoy raising cattle, and so he left that, and he went to medical school and became the diabetes expert for Fargo. But it wasn't until much later that I realized that nutrition and the food choices you make are the most important single consideration, not just for diabetes, but for so many other aspects of health. So it wasn't something I grew up with at all, I have to say, but I'm quickly making up for lost time.
So before we talk more about nutrition, I think there's a gap between Washington, D.C. and Fargo. So you have some connection with Minnesota. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Well, I went to school at Macalester College in St. Paul. And then after I graduated, I worked at a hospital called Fairview Hospital. And one of my jobs in the hospital was to be the autopsy assistant. My job title was morgue attendant, but what I actually did was when anyone died in the hospital, I would help the pathologist do an exam and do the autopsies. And so one day a man died in the hospital of a massive heart attack, probably from eating hospital food, but that's another issue. So anyhow, the pathologist wanted to examine the heart. And so you take what looks like a garden clipper and you just cut the ribs off this side and off this side, and you pull the ribs off the chest, and that opened up the chest to show the heart. And he sliced it into a coronary artery. And he knew I was going to go to medical school, so he wanted to make sure that I saw everything. And so he had me feel inside the coronary artery, and it felt like concrete or like a clay pipe stem or something like that. And he said, that's atherosclerosis, and that's, your bacon and eggs causes that. So anyhow, at the end of this examination, he had shown me the narrowed arteries to the heart that caused the heart attack, and the narrowed carotid arteries going to the brain, and the narrowed femoral arteries going to the legs, all showing this disease process of atherosclerosis, artery narrowing. So he left the room, and I had to clean up. And so I put the ribs back in the chest, and I sewed the skin up and everything. And it was kind of mid-afternoon by that time, and so I ran up to the cafeteria. and they were serving ribs for lunch.
Ribs.
Oh,
And I have to say,
Oh.
it smelled like a dead body.
Yeah.
And it looked like a dead body. And I said to myself, wait a minute, it is a dead body, you know?
Yes.
And I didn't become a vegetarian on the spot, but I could not eat that. And I couldn't get it out of my head. And so when we did autopsies afterwards, and also when I would see meat being served, the smell would, yeah, it smelled like death to me. And I know that sounds like a crazy thing. So anyhow, after that, I started medical school, and I started to get involved in more nutrition education and things. One thing led to another, and I started to also think about the broader issues and how animals are treated and the other health issues. And I decided to change my own diet. And in the course of doing that, I discovered the power that people could take into their hands when they change their diets.
Wow. So that's a quite quite a change, and it allow, kind of the time, I say that's a game changer, that changing your diet, and also you newly discover a new world of practicing medicine. So when we are counting PCRM, now this year is reaching 41 years. So that means you started with PCRM 41 years ago. You were still so young. So how
I think
did
he's
you,
still young.
I mean, now it's still young, right? But way back to 41 years ago, how did you start this? I mean, at that point, 41 years ago, the vegetarian diet was not quite popular, or how you start that? It's quite a very courageous person you were at that time.
I finished my residency. I moved to New York, and I was working at a hospital called St. Vincent's Hospital in New York City. And I had an active medical practice there. But I found myself discovering that doctors didn't do anything about nutrition. They didn't talk about nutrition much. And they didn't do anything about heart attack until it came into the emergency room. You know, you could have taken steps to prevent it, but we weren't doing that. Or are there steps that could reduce breast cancer risk? We weren't doing anything. All we did is wait until the breast cancer showed up on a mammogram. So I thought we should be doing something about that. And we should also look at how research is done. Rather than studying rats and mice and dogs, trying to give them diabetes and figuring out ways to make a new pill, why don't we study human beings and understand where this disease really begins and see what we could do in an ethical way to tackle this? So I set up this group with a terrible name called the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. And I called it a committee because I really wanted to be just 10 or 15 doctors who would weigh in and help other groups provide maybe some medical expertise that they might find useful. But I have to say, we kind of grew in ways that I wasn't really expecting. And so we now have a staff of about 100 people here in Washington, D.C., and a huge membership worldwide. And we still tackle these issues today, that we do tackle healthy diets and prevention, and we also deal with research. We conduct research studies, and we also insist that research be done ethically, and that people look beyond the idea of poisoning a cat or a dog, and that there are better, more sophisticated, more ethical ways to do research. So anyway, those are all things that we're busy with.
Wow. So imagine 40 years ago. Now we're talking about food as medicine. But you have been doing that 40 years ago. You're really visionary in this aspect. And especially when we talk about food, the first association is weight. And then what comes after weight is diabetes. So did you make this connection at a time?
Yeah.
When in the mid-1990s, a foundation came to talk to me, and they said that they gave out money for people to do research on diabetes. And they said, but everyone's applying for money to do experiments on rats and mice. And they said they didn't want to do that. And they said, what could I guide them to a better kind of research? And so I said to them what I just shared with you, is that I would suggest focusing on human health and really making nutrition be number one. And they said, well, that sounds good, but could you design the study that you think would be helpful? And so I helped them design the study. And then they said, well, why don't you do the study for us? you know. And so anyway, I didn't intend to do this, but I linked up with the Georgetown University Department of Endocrinology and worked with their endocrinologists about how would you construct a diet for type 2 diabetes. But I was influenced by some findings that had shown that type 2 diabetes starts as insulin resistance. So the cells of your body, for some reason, aren't taking in blood sugar like they should. They're leaving the sugar to build up in the blood. And if the muscle and liver cells can pull that sugar out of the blood and use it for energy, that's what the system really wants. So we decided to do a study that did not cut carbohydrate or give people tiny little portions. It was a completely vegan diet, a 100% plant-based diet, because we knew if we got the fat out of the diet, that would help and maximize fiber. And the initial study was small. It was just a handful of people, really, but the effects were so powerful that their lives were just transformed. They were able to reduce their medicines, and it was life-changing. So we did a much bigger study, and NIH funded us to do a much bigger and longer study. And that's where we showed that a low-fat plant-based diet, a low-fat vegan diet, is the diet of choice for type 2 diabetes. It's much better for improving A1C and causing weight loss, and much easier. I say that because, you know, many people think that to go vegan must be difficult, but you're not counting anything. You're not limiting portions. You're never going to bed hungry. You're eating as much as you want. And in studies that we're doing now, our people can't believe that they're allowed to eat pasta, or that they can have a bowl of oatmeal in the morning. You know, my doctor wouldn't ever let me eat this before. And it's so much easier. And the results are just huge. So we've done quite a number of research studies now over the past couple of decades, and it's been really very rewarding.
So go ahead, Dr. J. No, you go ahead.
So when we talk about diet and diabetes, and people always say it's the carbohydrates, as I mentioned. And what do you think about the keto? Even they promote the plant-based keto, how would that affect the diabetes in terms of the pathogenesis?
Yeah. Well, keto is a sort of a fancy word for a low carbohydrate diet. And it started out as Atkins and things like that. And it's been on and off popular. And it's true that if you don't eat any carbohydrate, if you say, I will never eat any bread, I will never have a piece of fruit, I won't eat an orange, I won't eat an apple, I'll never eat a potato, I won't eat any pancakes, I won't have any biscuits, I won't have any carbohydrate at all, well, if you do that, you're going to lose weight, because carbohydrates are half of what we eat. The second thing you'll do is your blood sugar is likely to fall, because carbohydrate turns to sugar in the blood. But you're not getting at the problem, and you're torturing yourself along the way, which is why most people give it up. Back in the 1990s, researchers at Yale did an amazing study. They brought in young people who were thin and healthy and did not have diabetes. And they put a needle in their arm. They put a needle in their vein. And they ran fat, lipid, into their veins. And as the fat went into their veins, into their bloodstream, and started depositing in their cells, they became insulin resistant, not within days or weeks, but within just a few hours. And so what they discovered is that fat that comes into our life gets parked in our cells, and that's the problem. So a keto diet doesn't get to that. It doesn't take the fat out of your cells. It just deprives you of carbohydrate. By the way, the Yale researchers went on and did other studies where they showed you don't have to put a needle in your arm. You could just give a person a single fatty meal. If I give you one meal, lunch, let's say I give you lunch, and it has a lot of fat in it, you will become insulin resistant that afternoon. So why do we use a vegan diet? Because it has no animal fat in it at all. And we also keep oils low. And if we do that, we have shown that we can remove about 1/3 of all of your liver fat within 16 weeks. It's gone. And when that happens, your liver becomes responsive to insulin, and your blood sugars go down, and your doctor says, I don't know what you're doing, but your blood sugar is falling. And the doctor then takes you to a lower insulin dose and a lower dose, and may end up stopping it completely. And the same thing happens in your muscles. Your muscles have fat in them from your food, and that starts to diminish too. And this is why we see something that we never had seen before, which was sometimes diabetes improves so much that the person doesn't need medicine, or even the disease disappears. And by the way, let me mention, we're doing a study now with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota, because Blue Cross Blue Shield has to pay for every time you go to the pharmacy for your medication, or you go to the emergency room or whatever. So we wanted to see, well, let's see how much you're paying. But what if we bring in a large group of people and introduce them to this diet? And so far, 184 people have joined the study. They're all people in Minnesota with type 2 diabetes.
Okay.
And they're all Blue Cross Blue members, but it's a wonderful thing, because we get together with the doctors and all the participants by Zoom. And we talk about healthy diets, and we hold their hand and help them to do it, and they get free visits with a dietitian and so forth. And so frankly, I hope if anybody is listening to this and they have diabetes and they're a member of Blue Cross of Minnesota, I hope they'll call us up, because we would love to have them join the study. We could use some more folks. Do you mind if I give that number?
Oh, no, please. Yeah.
Okay, it's 202, and maybe I'll mention this again in the program later.
Yes, and we can post on the site.
It's 202-527-7363. That's 202-527-7363. So this is for anybody if you're a Blue Cross member and you've got type 2 diabetes, give us a call. We'd love to see if you could join the program. The program is totally free. It's where we will help you make diet changes. We'll help you make big diet changes. Our goal is to help people lose weight and to improve their blood sugars and to save their life. There's also a website. It's pcrm.org/study. So PCRM is Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, but the website is just pcrm.org/study, and you'll find more information.
I do want to mention, thank you very much for the great work in terms of this research that is so, it's kind of benefit to anybody who's still calling regarding my doctor told me that I have to take the medication for the rest of my life, or they cannot give me any diet suggestion. From time to time we do hear people like that, and we always refer them to PCRM for more resources. Of course, the Lotus Health Foundation put a lot of resources as well. Quite frankly, diabetes is the number one things that draw my attention and tune in to PCRM and Dr. Barnard way back to, I should say, 11 years ago. And that was very eye-opening to me. And I learned that from our medical director at that point, is Dr. Thomas Harmon, who retired from Mayo Clinic. And so since then, it was a shocking news to me, and as well as so many people, that we promote the plant-based nutrition, and we hosted many classes. That time was a CHIP program. And it did create a lot of amazing stories, and really shocked their physician. So that is also a way that when we help our patient or community folks to improve their diabetes condition, that further indirectly educate the physician. So they kind of prompt them to look up what is that and where that come from. So tremendous work, including my own father, that he, in fact, even he looks skinny, but he has type 2 diabetes. And 2 years ago, we found that his kidney function dropped to stage 3, and just within 2 years of putting him on the plant-based nutrition over summer when he stayed with us, and it went back to normal. So it's so powerful. Yeah.
And thank you for mentioning the effect on physicians. It's a little bit funny, because you think the doctors would know this. But in our study, I mentioned in the caring study that we're doing at Blue Cross Blue Shield, the participants all have their own doctors. And so they go back to the doctor every so often to get followed, and which is important. You want to make sure you see your doctor regularly and follow your doctor's advice. But we had one of our participants the other day was saying he had been on 80 units of insulin. And
Oh.
his blood sugar had improved and improved and improved and improved and improved. And his doctor at some point looked at him and said, "Wait, I've got you down to 8 units of insulin. How did this happen?"
Yeah.
Or people come off their insulin.
Mm-hmm.
We've had a number of people where they have all signs of diabetes are gone.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctors just want to jump around the room and say, "Wait, when I was in medical school, we didn't have anything this powerful.
Mm-hmm.
How can this be?
Mm-hmm.
We never had a drug like this." And the patient is thrilled because they're on less medicine, they've lost weight, and their heartburn tends to go away, or their
Mm-hmm.
indigestion goes. All these other things go away. Now, don't get me wrong. Um, I want people to take advantage of what diet will do, but don't throw your prescription in the trash and don't cancel your
Mm-hmm.
doctor's appointment,
Mm-hmm.
because everyone's going to get a different result. But nonetheless, nutrition is far more powerful than
Mm-hmm.
I had thought when we started out, I have to say. And when the patients share with the doctors what they've been through, it educates the doctors so much that I
Mm-hmm.
tell the patients they should send their doctor a bill for all the education that they gave the medical doctor about how to plan a diet and that kind of thing.
I like that.
Well, so amazing that I know that American Diabetes Association doesn't like us to say diabetes reversal. They want us to put as diabetes remission.
Mission.
So the topic of diabetes is very dear to my heart. My fellowship training at Mayo Clinic was wound. So diabetic foot ulcer was my main focus. But then at the same time, I have a very strong type 2 diabetes genes. My mom and one of my sisters died of diabetic complications. Of course, they're all from the heart. People talk about that, but it's from diabetes. And at the same time, I also have a very nice high cholesterol genes from my dad. So this, to me, it's just like they try to be equal. So to be fair, but when we talk about diabetes, you want to talk about low carb diet, low fat diet.
Mm.
And now is some discussion on how low the fat content should be. Would a low fat diet affect your brain function?
Mm.
So that will be the question. Have you looked into that? Any research on this?
Back in 2003 in Chicago, a study called the Chicago Health and Aging Program gave some results about fat ingestion and brain function. And what they had done is they had taken advantage of the fact that a lot of people in Chicago vary in their dietary intake, and they tracked the diets of a huge number of people, and then they just watched what happened as the years went by. And what they discovered is one particular form of fat was trouble. It's saturated fat, which is the kind of fat that predominates in meat and dairy products. It's fat that's solid at room temperature. So if you've cooked, say, some bacon in a frying pan and it's hot, so the grease is liquid, but then when the fry pan cools down, that fat turns into this waxy kind of white fat that sticks to the pan. That's saturated fat. What they found in Chicago was that those people eating the most saturated fat had 2 to 3 times the Alzheimer's disease risk compared to people who tended to avoid it. There was something about eating that high saturated fat diet that made it more likely that they would get dementia later in life, specifically Alzheimer's. And then researchers at Kaiser found out that the reason seems to be cholesterol, that saturated fat makes your cholesterol level higher. And if you track people with a high cholesterol at age 40 or 45 or 50, I'm talking about youngish people, they're at higher risk for Alzheimer's disease later on. So we want to get our cholesterol down, and step one of that is to avoid these bad fats. Now, we're not going to avoid all fat because there are traces of fat in even some broccoli or spinach or beans have tiny traces of fat, and the body needs that. But you don't need the added fats that people build into their diet, especially if it's from meat or from dairy or from the tropical oils like coconut oil or palm oil. Those are high in saturated fat too.
What do you think about the olive oil? I think a lot more health experts start to be more open to a touch of olive oil. So, what is your take on that?
Olive oil is healthier than chicken fat. It's healthier than dairy fat. The saturated fat content of olive oil is only about 14%. If you compare that to beef fat is about 50% saturated fat. So olive oil is better, it's at 14%. But on the other hand, it's not zero. So we, in our research studies, we're dealing with people who want to lose weight. And if it's olive oil, it's got 9 calories in every gram, just like any other fat. It's better quality, but it's still pretty fattening. And also it interferes with getting your diabetes under control. So we encourage people. It's true that olive oil is better than animal fat. There's no question about that. And the polyphenols that are in it probably have a blood pressure lowering effect. So I think all that's to the good. But on the other hand, it does slow down weight loss and it does slow down the improvements in diabetes. So we encourage people to get a non-stick pan and figure out how to use it.
So now, the next, I think the next one is, Dr. Barnard, where you're talking about the diabetes, you also mentioned about the weight loss. And I think these two are correlated. Would you like to share more deeper on that?
Yes, they are strongly related. When people gain weight, the risk of diabetes increases. The risk of Alzheimer's does too, by the way. And when they lose weight, their diabetes tends to improve. So getting rid of excess weight, unwanted weight, is always a good idea. The problem is people have really tortured themselves to do that. You were talking about the Atkins diet, and this was back in the 1950s. And so people would go out to dinner and their husband or wife would say, let's go to that favorite Italian place. And they'd go there and they'd say, well, I can't have the bruschetta, I can't have the spaghetti, I can't, and they felt guilty if they ever ate any carbohydrate. And then people would do just low calorie diets where they would eat their usual foods, but much smaller amounts and try to starve. And with all these things, you can lose weight, but you just can't do the diet. And some of them with Atkins, for example, or keto, about 1 in 3 has a high cholesterol spike because they're eating meat. They're eating non-carbohydrate foods, and that doesn't help them either. And more recently, the big fad of the past few years is GLP-1 drugs like Wegovy or Ozempic. And what they do is they turn down the appetite so that you don't eat so much. They have other effects too. And turning down the appetite is a good thing. But the bad part of it is that they're really expensive. They do have some side effects that prevent quite a few people from not continuing with them. But let's say you take it and you succeed and you lose a lot of weight and all your friends are impressed and you've gone out and you bought all new clothes. If you stop taking that drug, you gain the weight back. So a person says, okay, here it is 2026, and if I took the drug and I lost weight, now for the rest of my life, I have to keep paying for this drug and putting up with the side effects, because if I don't, then it's like protection money. If I stop taking it, then I'm going to get all that weight back. So with our research, what we have found is that while I respect people who are looking at these other approaches, what we have found that with a completely healthy plant-based diet, when people follow it as part of a healthy lifestyle, add exercise into it as well if you can. When people put that together, what they discover is that their weight loss is impressive. It's often about the same as what you'd see with a GLP-1 or sort of in that same ballpark. And you're saving money. The average person saves about $500 a year on a plant-based diet because you're not buying cheese anymore. You're not buying meat.
Oh, I
You're not buying these.
see.
You are spending more on broccoli and beans,
Yeah.
but you're saving about 16% of your food costs. And it's an amazing thing. You can stick with it and you feel good and you're glad for it. And you don't have to keep going to the pharmacy and paying more money and so forth. So that's the approach that we're encouraging. And there are a lot of people, I'm sure, who are listening to this who might have taken a GLP-1 in the past. They might have taken Wegovy or Ozempic and now they've stopped and their weight is coming back. Let me encourage anyone to try going on a plant-based diet. And there are lots of resources that you have and that we have to help them give it a try. And because you do need a little support along the way. And so as you try it out, see how you feel. And what people very often say is, well, I wish I had done this before I started taking the drug, because it's solving my problem in a way that really feels not just healthy, but empowering. Because suddenly you're not the victim of a person who's giving you a drug, or you're not just a customer taking a drug. You are in charge. You are deciding what you're going to make in the kitchen. You're deciding how your family's going to use food, and it's powerful. And it's such a wonderful thing to take advantage of.
Yeah, I think another big side effect people don't realize is about 1/3 of the weight loss from taking GLP-1 is actually coming from muscles. It's not the fat, it's the muscles. And then
Right.
reduce their muscle strength, especially in the more senior population. They may run into the higher risk of falls because they suddenly lose weight, the strength on their lower legs. And so when we talk about nutrition, one thing is more confusing or people don't pay attention to is the trans fat. As you mentioned, that saturated fat will become solid at room temperature. But when they want to be healthier, and then they create this trans fat. So can you explain what trans fat is and why it is harmful to your health?
Trans fat was invented chemically years ago, where researchers took the fat molecule of, say, a liquid fat, a liquid oil like corn oil. You could pour it. It's not solid, it's liquid. But with a chemical change, where I change the molecule a little bit, trans means across. So you're going across this molecule and rearranging the hydrogen atoms on it. Suddenly, it's not liquid anymore. It's a solid. And that allowed people to make margarine, or things that tasted like butter but were less expensive. And so you would go to a restaurant and grill in New York or New Jersey or Minnesota or somewhere, and the French fries would come out of this vat. And then if you had turned the fryer off, all that liquid would turn into this solid. Well, that's what happens in your body too,
Yeah.
so to speak. You're eating the trans fats, they raise your cholesterol just like saturated fat does. They're just as bad. So they have been banned. The Food and Drug Administration said you can't make those anymore. You cannot put them in food. You can't use them in your restaurant anymore. You got to stop that. However, there's still one way that a grocery store can legally sell them, and that is in the meat counter. If you go to the meat counter and you take a hunk of beef and you send it to a laboratory, they'll say, there's trans fats in this. You say, yeah, that's right. It's legal to sell. Why? What happens? When the cow eats corn or grass or whatever the cow eats, it goes into the first part of the stomach called the rumen. And the rumen is a big tank that ferments things, and the food sits in there for about 2 days, and the cow coughs it up and chews it up and swallows it down. All that time, it's rearranging the molecule too. It's making trans fats. So the natural microbiome of the cow's rumen creates trans fats that get into the cow's muscle tissue. And so the cow goes to the slaughterhouse, they cut them up, they send it, and then there's trans fats in that meat. And the FDA said, we're not going to regulate that. Forget it. And so they don't. And so dairy products and meat, they come from cows. And so it could be any ruminant animal. They create trans fats, and it's totally legal to sell. It is not written on the label, and that's a big problem.
Very interesting. Oh, I never thought about that. Trans fat from animal.
You'll be glad to know that one of the nicest things about a spinach leaf is it does not have a rumen. So it might want to chew on the cud for a while, but it can't do it. It's just a leaf of spinach. And that's true for an orange or an apple or a banana. And so there's no trans fats. They might want to make it. They might want to be creative like a cow and make poison too, but they can't because they're plants.
So, speaking of diabetes, the weight loss, and that directly related. And then, how about the diabetes weight to the younger generation? What do you think about that now for the
You have
current?
put your finger on the most troubling part of any physician's practice. We used to say, when I was in medical school, we used to say type 2 diabetes doesn't occur until you're 40.
Mm.
Nowadays, we are seeing people with type 2 diabetes when they're 14. If you go into any school in Minnesota or North Dakota or anywhere else, and if you did blood samples, you would find a lot of these kids have pre-diabetes already. Some of them are tipping into, now I'm not talking about type 1, some of them have type 1. That's what we used to call childhood onset. That's where the pancreas isn't making insulin anymore. And those people will need to take insulin for their whole lives, although they still do well on a vegan diet, but they still need insulin. I'm talking about type 2, that you'll see these teenagers getting to pre-diabetes and sometimes diabetes before they get their high school diploma. And if you look in the schools, you'll see overweight. A generation ago, or 2 generations ago, there might be one kid with a weight issue in a class. Nowadays, it's a third of the class has these problems or more. And of course, kids are physically active. They can eat almost anything, and they could sort of burn it off, so to speak. But when you look in their arteries, they're starting to get atherosclerosis, even at that early age. Many of them are gaining weight. And let me blame one particular food for this. And it is something that they sell at the pizza place and at the taco restaurant and at just about any other place, and it's cheese. Now, in 1909, the US Department of Agriculture started tracking how much cheese people eat. And the average American in 1909 ate 3.8 pounds of cheese per year. That's how much they ate, 3.8 pounds in a year. Well, they started promoting it and encouraging fast food chains, especially in the 70s and 80s, to start putting more cheese on top. So let's have a cheeseburger. Let's have cheese pizza. And the US government strongly encouraged more production to help farmers. And farmers are honest people and they appreciated some help. And so the dairy milk sales were going down, but dairy cheese sales were going way up. And as of now, the average American is not eating 3.8 pounds of cheese in a year. They're eating about 40 pounds. And it's about 70 or 80,000 calories they're getting every year from cheese. And what kind of fat is that? It's mostly saturated fat. So it makes the kids gain weight. It's bad for their health in so many ways. And schools will serve it. And it's part of these lunch programs. And the kids will love it. At first, I think, yeah, it smells like old socks. I don't want to eat that. But they get kind of hooked on it. And cheese has what are called casomorphins in it, which are little peptides, little tiny protein strands that attach to the part of the brain that opiates attach to. And it's we speculate that this is part of why cheese seems to be more addicting. People like a glass of milk, maybe, but they don't feel addicted to it. But with cheese, a lot of times people do. And I think it's a big problem. I think it's the biggest reason kids are gaining weight nowadays.
Yeah, May and I did a project with the University of Minnesota Rochester freshmen, and we found diabetes, high cholesterol in the freshmen. So it is definitely a problem. And when we talk about diabetes, we talk about cholesterol. One thing, the first organ people will think about is the heart. But what I think about is the kidneys, hypertension and diabetic nephrology. So one ingredient we really want to touch is how about salt?
Yes. Salt is something that you do need tiny amounts of. Your body says, I need a little bit of sodium. And your body needs it for many things. But your body will also say, I think you're going too far. Because what it means is if you take a potato, oh, it's got what, maybe, I don't know, 20 milligrams of sodium or something like that. It's very low. But when you take that potato and you cut it up into potato chips, and you put it into a fryer grease, and you take it out and you salt it up and you put it in a potato chips bag, it comes out with 330 milligrams of sodium. That's a problem. And so parents know that, and they're concerned about their kids and their spouses eating this stuff. But what they might miss is that cheddar cheese has 350 milligrams of sodium, and Edam has 500, and Velveeta has 800. So if I haven't said enough bad things about cheese already, it's also, unfortunately, one of the really high salt foods. And the salt is part of the cheese production process. When you're making cheese, you start with milk, and you put cultures in, bacterial cultures that cause it to ferment. And then later on in the process, as the cheese is finishing up, they put salt in to stop the bacterial cultures from continuing the fermentation process. And then they discovered that makes it taste better too. And so they've added huge amounts, and that's part of the problem.
Yeah, the salt, sugar, fat, the perfect combination to be addicted.
Yeah, it's true.
So
It's
before we,
true. The casomorphins are something that's really only in cheese, and that's an additional thing. It's in the protein, and when you digest the protein, these little peptides come out and they get into your blood and go to the brain, and they stimulate what we call mu receptors, that are the narcotic receptors. And scientists have scratched their heads saying, why would there be an addictive substance in milk? I mean, how could that possibly be? Or a peptide with these opiate activity. And what we speculate is that it's part of the mother-infant bond, that the mother nourishes the baby, and so the mother cow gives the baby protein and a little bit of sugar and various hormones, but also this little bit of feel-good that goes to the calf's brain and makes the calf look up at mom and say, oh, you're so nice to me. And it's part of that bond. At least that's what we think.
before we go on the next topic, I'm just curious. So we know there's processed food and there's a lot of salt, sugar, fat in the restaurants. So do you cook yourself? Or do you
Do
go
I
out to-
cook?
Yeah.
I'm not a very good cook, but I do my best, yes.
Since you're on this topic, Dr. J, what is your daily meal look like? Breakfast, lunch? Yeah.
All right. Well, let me start with maybe going out to eat. If I go out to eat somewhere and somebody is making something, one of my favoriteest things is to go to a Mexican restaurant where they'll make a bean burrito. And it's a bean burrito. In fact, when I was a kid growing up in Fargo, there was a restaurant called the Mexican Village on Main Avenue that would make the #2 burrito, had refried beans in a tortilla with as many jalapenos as they could possibly stuff in there without it being life-threatening. And then they put a vegan gravy on top. It wasn't a vegan restaurant, but that's just what they did. And if you wanted cheese, they would add it, but you don't have to have the cheese on it. And so that's a great thing. But I'm a big fan of Italian food. Last night I was in an Italian restaurant where they make angel hair pasta with this nice, there's a marinara sauce, or they have a arrabbiata sauce, which is Italian. That's the Italian word meaning angry. That's the spicy tomato sauce. Or nice bruschetta, which is the bread with little tomato bits on it. But I have to say, that's how I might finish my day. I'm going to tell you how I start my day, but people are going to think this is scandalous because they're never going to want to do this. I discovered years ago that if I start my day off with some plant protein, it really makes me feel balanced during the day. But I don't want to have any animal protein. I'm not going to have bacon or sausage or anything like that. I don't want my arteries snapping closed. So what I'll often do is I grill up some tofu. And I have a non-stick pan. It's a really good one. And I cut up some tofu and I put it in the pan, and it just, with no oil or anything, and it gradually grills. You can do this with tempeh also. Tempeh is a fermented soybean product, and you can marinate it in soy sauce and grill that too. Delicious. So I'll have that, and I'll take my tofu out, and I put a little powdered ginger and a little nutritional yeast, and a little touch of soy sauce on top, and that's how I start.
Mhm.
And then I'll have a green vegetable, like some broccoli or spinach or asparagus too. And you'll think, for breakfast? The answer is, yeah, for breakfast. It just, I don't know, I got into this. It's really great. And then after that, I'll have something that has more starch in it or something, which could be oatmeal, or it could be a breakfast cereal with soy milk, or maybe a papaya or a cantaloupe or something like that. And so I have those 3 stages. I do that every day.
Mhm.
And the good news is you don't have to cook it every day, because you can cook up your batch of tofu on Sunday and it's ready. You just throw it in the microwave and bing, in 5 seconds it's ready. And I cooked up a whole bunch of broccoli on Sunday also. So I just take that out, I zap that. It's really, really fast. And if I pour some cereal and soy milk in a bowl, oh, put some berries on your cereal, like blueberries or strawberries, good for the brain. And you go out the door and you feel like a superhero, because you've had everything your body needs and it took you 5 seconds to do it. So that's my breakfast.
Do you eat dinner at all? Oh no, yes,
Sure.
yeah, you went out, but normally do you do like fasting in the evening for a longer time?
Oh, I do fast. I fast between about 8 or 9 o'clock at night and 5:30 the next day.
Ah.
I'm teasing you. I'm teasing you.
Yeah, I mean that sounds fasting, right? I mean that is, because we
Well, I'm
discover,
asleep.
yeah. Yeah, while we are asleep, that's a smart fasting. Yes. So,
No,
yeah.
you don't get up at 2 a.m. to have another snack.
Yeah.
No, I eat 3 meals a day, and I don't pay any attention to how much I eat, because because you can't overeat. If you're eating really healthy foods, your appetite switch just says, we're done. We've had what we need, and that's it. So there we go.
I think, Dr. Barnard, you touched the ingredient that pretty much the same on your book, The Power Food Diet, about the weight loss. You know, you're talking about jalapeno, beans, green vegetables. So I think one thing, a quick takeaway from the audience is, you're talking about for for the insulin resistance, for the weight loss, and for the young people in this generation, we have a concern about their early onset of diabetes, obesity, because that will lay, further on for the other diseases. So what is a quick, the key ingredient that you encourage people to keep in mind?
Well, there are many, many of these things, and I want to tip my hat to researchers at Harvard, who back in 2015 came out with a study where, instead of looking at what you should not eat, they looked at people in their huge cohort studies and found that certain foods, if you eat those foods, if you eat lots of those foods, people tend to lose weight. And the -- 1 food on the list was berries. It could be blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, but something about the berry helps. And by the way, even our keto friends like berries. Or the people who do keto diets will say, well, we don't want you to have a banana, but berries, they're pretty good. So berries are good. And the reason that berries are especially great is that bright color comes from anthocyanins, which the name isn't important, but they protect the berry and they protect you too. Cruciferous vegetables, green vegetables, melons like cantaloupe, which are rich in beta carotene, or watermelon, which is rich in lycopene, that's the red pigment. Soy products are great. In fact, everything that comes from a bean is great. So those are some of the foods that I encourage people to build in. But if a person has diabetes and they're thinking, okay, I heard about this, I don't know how to start. It's good to get to know these foods and have them in your house and do it. But at some point, do a test. Take a week and just think of all the foods that you like that are plant-based. And then once you've made your list, eat those foods for 3 weeks as a totally vegan diet. Eat the foods that you like that are plant-based. Spaghetti with tomato sauce or cereal with soy milk or whatever it is. But don't have any animal products for 3 weeks. And tune into your programs or other programs so you get lots of support and somebody to answer your questions. But if you do this for 3 weeks, at the end of that time, 2 things happen. One is you discover that your body is transforming. It's changing. You're losing weight without trying. Your blood sugar is coming down without trying. And your tastes also are starting to change, where maybe strawberries weren't your thing before, but now these are little jewels. It's funny. It's funny how you start thinking differently. And so that 3 week time period is a magic thing. So I encourage everybody to do that, and it changes your life. And after that, people say, okay, pork chops, no, I'm not going to go back to that anymore. I'm going to be eating these healthy foods. And that gives you this key to hold into your hand that unlocks a new door to better health. It's amazing to see.
It doesn't sound
Yeah.
take too much. It doesn't sound that cost too much to do it. It's pretty sustainable, very sustainable.
Oh, people save about $500 a year on a vegan diet. We've tracked this. When people go vegan in our studies, we don't just track their A1C and their lipids and everything else, but we track their food costs. And they save about $500 a year. It's about 16% of their food costs.
Very good news.
Wow.
Yeah.
And PCRM has a 21 challenge, right? People
Yeah,
want to
21
try
days.
these 21 days, they can just go on PCRM and use the resource there. And when we talk about food, I really want to talk about how the wonderful food we have at our annual event and our annual community wellness symposium in Gala, which Dr. Barnard will be here, and you can try the food and you can see Dr. Barnard in person. And I just don't know whether Dr. Barnard remember the first time you came to our event as our keynote speaker. The summer before, May and I actually stalked you in Madison, Wisconsin. We wanted to know who you were and what you were talking about. And it was amazing. They told us that which room you'll be speaking at. We went to the room, it was empty. We said, empty. But then a few minutes before the time, the room was
packed.
full.
Yeah, packed.
Including outside. People just couldn't get into the room.
Yeah.
And apparently you were on a tight schedule that day. As soon as you finish your talk, you had to leave to the next event. And the room became empty again. And then like, wow, who is this person?
It's amazing. And then we were so excited you accept our invitation to speak at our conference the first time. And you also further educated at a Mayo Clinic Grand Round to teach a lot of physician, healthcare providers, and still that impact has still go a long way. Now people still remember your talk. And so we are so excited to have you come back again this year. It's really a treat.
Well, I wouldn't miss it, and I'm delighted that you're doing it. And I have to say, I've had a sneak peek at the other guests who are coming, and this is the best conference you have ever done. I'm really excited about it. So thank you so much for including me and for putting this on.
Well, thank you. So I know we're running out of time, but there's one question, one burning question I still have is, it has been more than 40 years you have been doing this, and you are so well known. You are on top of everyone in the lifestyle medicine. But what keeps you going from now on? You're still going on, just like an Energizer Bunny. It just keeps going and going.
Well, why would one stop? I have to say, on the one hand, our problems are still here. There are still industries pushing unhealthy foods. And there are, unfortunately, as I mentioned, there are adults and there are children who are struggling with these issues. So our work is not yet done. There's a lot of noise out there. There are competing messages that keep people confused and having them eating other things. So our work is not done. The other thing that I do want to say is there is a huge reward to our work as well. When people come in and they're starting to change their diets, they're like kids who are 14 years old at their first dance. They're kind of reluctant, they're a little scared to change their diet. But pretty soon they realize it's fun to change their diet, it's enjoyable, they get huge rewards. And to see people be able to blossom into good health is a wonderful experience for me too.
Oh, thank you so much. A great message. We know that PCRM is a great resources that we refer to the community, even healthcare providers, very, very easy to understand and resourceful. We will put PCRM's site link, and also your Blue Bushel Research Project contact information on this link when we publish this talk. We really grateful that have you support the Lotus Health Foundation and the growth of the lifestyle medicine, plant-based nutrition in our community for 10 years. It has been going very strong, and thank you for partnering with us.
Well, thank you very much for the kind invitation. I'm really looking forward to seeing you again.
Yeah,
thank
thank
you.
you.
So let's summarize a few key points from today's conversation with Dr. Barnard. Nutrition plays a powerful role in preventive and even reversing chronic diseases. And plant-based diets can improve metabolic health, reduce inflammation, support longevity, and diabetes prevention, diabetes. So building healthy community will require education, collaboration, and leadership that Dr. Barnard has been leading the PCRM. Yeah. Thank you very much. And
Thank you very
thanks for
much.
joining us on Healing Step to Wellness. I'm Dr. J.
I'm May.
Guiding you toward whole person health, one step
And one bite
at a time.
Thank you.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you next
See you
time.
next time.